lone wolf.
Gore and his daughter Love are the sole remaining inhabitants of the unidentified extraterrestrial planet where the film begins. He begs his deity Rapu for assistance because his daughter is starving to death, but his pleas are ignored and she dies in his arms. After burying her body in the sand, he hears a voice beckoning to him from a distance. He pursues it and finds an oasis with fresh fruit, which he immediately starts to guzzle down before Rapu meets him, who recently murdered the most recent wielder of the Necrosword, an antiquated weapon that corrupts its wielder and drains their life force while granting them the capacity to slaughter gods. Gore thinks that Rapu has brought him before him in order to fulfill the promise of an endless prize, but Rapu laughs and makes fun of him, exposing that there was never one. Rapu starts choking a betrayed Gore to death after he renounces his deity, but then the Necrosword beckons to Gore and curses him, enabling him to stab Rapu in the neck. He promises that all gods will perish before he delivers a last lethal blow with his newly acquired power. After that, we are transported to the planet Indigar, where Korg starts narrating to the locals the story of Thor Odinson. In essence, he breaks down the everything you need to know before watching Thor, Love and Thunder film. He does, however, also describe the adventures he and the Guardians of the Galaxy have had since departing Earth after defeating Thanos with the Avengers, and how he was able to get himself back in shape. Despite the fact that he has lost nearly all of his closest friends and relatives, he still experiences intense grief and suffering. Since the Indigorian sacred temple is no longer protected by their gods, who were killed between Gore's vow and the current conflict, he has continued to fight and now seeks to defend Indigar and the Guardians from some bird-like creatures that had come to claim it. Even though Thor destroys the temple on his road to victory, he triumphantly defeats the invaders by himself. As a result, King Khan gives Thor 2 noisy goats. After that, the group and the goats continue on to the Milano, the Guardian's ship, where they observe several distress calls that have surfaced across the galaxy. As a man known as the God Butcher has killed several gods. One call even came from Lady Sif, Thor's close ally. Thor is saddened by the team's decision to split up because so many people are in danger. The Guardians board their ship, leaving Thor and Korg to search for Sif, which they soon do through the Bifrost on the cosmic border governed by Falagar the Behemoth, the now-deceased deity. They discover Sif defeated there, her arms severed, and she informs them that the God Butcher is on her way to New Asgard. The Asgardians had to relocate after Asgard was destroyed in Ragnarok, and they chose Tunsberg, Norway, on Earth because it had been the home of the Tesseract, who was handed the role before Thor and the Guardians left Earth. Their first strike, however, comes when Gore sends shadow creatures to kidnap the town's children. The monsters in Asgard's army, who are later reinforced by a returning Thor, engage in combat. However, Thor is immediately sidetracked by what sounds like the sound of Mjolnir. The hammer he formerly used for centuries, he is still obsessed with Mjolnir's return and summons it toward him, only to be shocked when it re-emerges in Jane Foster's grasp. After being exiled from Asgard by his father, Thor first met Jane more than 10 years ago. The two fell in love and were romantically involved for roughly 4 years. However, they quickly became estranged from one another. She kept improving as an astronomer, while he spent more time on duty as a superhero, and this finally caused the two to split up. Until recently, when Jane was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, it seemed they would never see one another again. Despite starting therapy, there was little chance that she would recover. However, after sensing Mjolnir beckoning for her, she quickly found fresh hope and went to fresh Asgard, where the mutilated Mjolnir is now a tourist destination. One night while they were together, Thor had Mjolnir vow to always look after Jane as she slept, which unintentionally left an enchantment. As a result, Mjolnir keeps his word and changes to grant Jane the mighty Thor's might. Gore shows up before Thor can attempt to make sense of any of this, and they fight briefly until Thor overcomes him and he flees with the kidnapped kids. After 9 years apart, the two Thors finally catch up as they start looking for the children. However, Jane believes it has been closer to 4 years because she was blipped by Thanos for 5 years. However, Thor is soon contacted by Axel, one of the kidnapped children. Axel is the son of Heimdall, the former strong gatekeeper of Asgard, and a close friend of Thor before he was murdered by Thanos. However, his son inherited his abilities, which is why he can now bring a vision ghost of Thor into the maw of the shadow monster that is trapping the children. Thor, Korg, Valkyrie, and Jane decide to journey to Omnipotent City, which is home to the most renowned and revered gods and is governed by the Olympian king of gods. But before they go out on their adventure, we find that even though Mjolnir seemed to be helping her health, the strength is actually making her weaker. She drops the hammer to show that she is sicker than before. Her mother was also dying of cancer when she was a little child, and her mother's words inspired her to keep fighting, so she picks up the hammer again. This brings back memories of that time. Thus, the four board a ship with StromBreaker and the Yelling Goats to travel to Omnipotent City. Once there, they pose as emotion gods in order to attend the Council of the Godheads meeting. While there, they pass by a number of gods. After making his triumphal appearance before the council, Zeus announces the winner of the contest for the greatest number of human souls sacrificed in the name of a god and starts talking about the location of this year's orgy, which makes Jane and Valkyrie angry with him. Since Zeus was his childhood idol, Thor yet maintains his faith in him, and he finally goes up to the stage to beg for his assistance in assembling an army to fight Gore. However, Zeus dismisses the fact that he has previously slain other gods and doesn't think he poses a threat, which makes Thor doubt his moral character. Zeus accomplishes this by tying him to the ground and, with a flick of his hand, removing his disguise. In the process, he unintentionally removes all of his clothing, exposing a tattoo of R.I.P. Loki and a list of the loved ones he has lost on his back. Though he doesn't have the key, Zeus refuses to help Gore reach eternity, one of the cosmic entities at the center of the universe that is said to grant the desire of the first person to reach it. Thor tries to beg him again, explaining that Gore has abducted Asgardian children. This is because Zeus feels he's already perfectly safe in Omnipotent City. After acknowledging that they will not assist, Thor requests that Zeus at least let them use his lightning rod, Thunderbolt, during the conflict. Since they might be able to tell Gore where Omnipotent City is, Zeus also rejects that request and forbids them from leaving at all. In order to force Jane, Valkyrie, and Korg to step in and stop him, he sends his guards after them. Zeus then steps in and shoots Thunderbolt into Korg's body, apparently killing him, before shooting it at Thor. However, a furious Thor is able to capture it and throw it back at Zeus, impaling him in the chest. However, since a Cronin's face is the sole component required for survival, it turns out that Korg survived the attack. Thor then seizes him and departs with Jane and Valkyrie, the latter of whom takes Zeus's Thunderbolt. They then resume their trek to the Shadow Realm, albeit with a minor concern that they will be pursued for the rest of their life by the entire god community. Thor is overcome by his emotions and eventually admits that he is still in love with Jane as they are traveling and gazing out at space dolphins. However, Jane responds by disclosing that she has cancer. Despite the devastating news, Thor continues to pursue love because he no longer wants to let his fear of losing it prevent him from ever falling in love. After exchanging kisses, the two decide to make the most of her remaining time together. When they eventually make it inside the Shadow Realm, they are perplexed as to why the kids don't seem to be there, until Jane discovers it's a trap after more investigation. She fires the weapon into the heavens after learning of texts that indicate the Bifrost, and later the StromBreaker, are the key to eternity. Gore attempts to coerce Thor from calling the axe when he appears and ensnares them in the darkness, but he refuses to give up. In order to compel Thor to call StromBreaker, he turns his love for Jane against him and starts choking her to death. Gore's shadow creatures are then the target of the three. However, Jane starts to deteriorate as the fight goes on, and when she is weaker and Thor is preoccupied with the shadow monsters, Gore stabs Valkyrie in the abdomen. They try to leave through the Bifrost, but Gore manages to seize StromBreaker and pull it out of Thor's hands as they are about to pass through it. When Jane returns to New Asgard, she loses consciousness. Thor brings her and Valkyrie to the hospital, where he learns that Jane's life force is being depleted by Mjolnir each time she wields it, rendering her incapable of battling the disease. Since it might be their last chance to be together, he advises her to stay and relax while he goes to save the kids alone. Since Valkyrie is unable to accompany him in the fight, she hands him Zeus's Thunderbolt, which he uses to instantly travel to the center of the universe, where Gore has already started to open the Gate of Eternity using StromBreaker. Additionally, Thor swiftly rescues the Asgardian youngsters from prison and assembles them after realizing he could use their assistance in fighting the shadow monsters. In order to give them the power of Thor for a brief period of time, he makes them each seize whatever weapon they can find and then utilizes Zeus's thunderbolt. After that, as Thor fights Gore, the kids fight the shadow monsters. And even though the children are winning their side of the fight, Gore keeps defeating Thor and is about to kill him before being thrown down by Mjolnir, which was fired by a returning Jane who had decided to use Mjolnir again after sensing her lover's pain. Along with regaining Stormbreaker, which Thor then throws to Axel so he and the children can go home, the two manage to defeat Gore and destroy the Necrosword, depriving him of his abilities. However, it seems to be too late, for Gore has already opened the portal of eternity and is moving in the direction of the creature, prepared to grant his wish. Gore maintains that he must quit, arguing that it is the only way to exact revenge on his daughter, despite Thor's entreaties. Though he still hopes Gore would choose love like he has and bring his daughter back, Thor concedes defeat and leaves to spend his final moments with Jane. When a dying Gore says she will be abandoned and fatherless, Jane reassures him that she won't be, since she knows Thor will take care of her. Thus, he fulfills his one request to revive her, allowing him to spend one final moment with her before the curse of the sword consumes him. As Jane's time is almost up, she and Thor exchange, "I love you," which end up being her last words as she dies away after their final farewell kiss. Later, we hear from Korg once again as he recounts the story of Jane Foster, the mighty Thor, who has now been memorialized with a statue in New Asgard. Additionally, we observe that the children have started receiving combat training from Sif and King Valkyrie, and Korg has completely recovered and is attempting to conceive with another Cronin named Dwayne. In the meantime, Thor has started to raise Gore's daughter as his own and travels the galaxy with her, using Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, respectively, to help anybody in need while also assuming the names of Love and Thunder. A still-alive Zeus is shown in a mid-credits scene recuperating from his wounds, enraged at how superheroes have distorted the god's image. In order to remind the galaxy that the gods should once again be feared, he dispatches his son Hercules to slay Thor. A post-credits scene shows Jane walking through the gates of what Heimdall reveals to be Valhalla, welcoming her to the afterlife.